Hello, esteemed listeners, guests, people stuck in transit or shopping malls. Maybe you're in a bubble bath listening to this podcast. Maybe it's the only way you can get through dinner with your family. Welcome to Richard and Carl present Deep Space and Dragons.
I was waiting for you to introduce yourself instead of the show there, Richard.
Well, Carl, I was going to passive aggressively introduce you by throwing a backhanded compliment. You fantastic bastard. Yeah,
There's this
introduction.
one person. There's this one person at my work, or not at my work, but they order from my work often enough, and I don't want to dox them, but
So we shall
their
refer
last
to
name
them as
no
replica.
I don't know how common this last name is, but their last name is Barstad.
I mean, I'm pretty sure you just doxed them because, like, we've given. I love the idea of someone actually going through 100 episodes to, like, build the map of the Carlverse just to realize Saskatchewan's not a real place.
Well, no, it's just funny because every time you see it, it's like it's bastard, but the R's in the wrong spot.
Batard.
It's Barstad.
I just keep thinking, imagine when we started this podcast if we just invented a small town and a province and just committed to that bit for like 100 episodes of, yeah, Carl in Twidaho.
Twidaho? That'd be pretty funny.
And just committed to it so strongly that people like in Germany are like, I didn't know Canada had a province called Eurasia. It's weird. Between Alberta and BC, there's Eurasia.
That would be pretty funny if everyone's looking for this province and they can't figure out where we actually are.
I mean, I do appreciate commitment to the bit. So I guess I'll have to ask, and you sort of started it. So what's new with you other than batards?
No, I mean, that was just a random segue. You called me a beautiful bastard, and I was like, ha, that reminds me of this Barstad person.
Good point.
Who I don't know, I've never actually directly met. But what's new with me? You know, I know that you said that reviewing movies doesn't have that Carl Core energy. We don't even know what that is, but that's not really the point.
What's interesting about the Carl Core energy? So I've been staring at our analytics this morning before our meetup, and it's like there's just no correlation between what we talk about and how good an episode does. So it's like we do a show and jump roundup, we do really good. We do a Sonic Sigmatic Saga. We do really bad. But why, though? So maybe I shouldn't declare things Carl Core and not Carl Core, because there's no rules here. Deadpool and Wolverine did great. I don't know if we started with a Carl Core opening or if you just talked about a random unrelated horror movie. I can't possibly know. I don't take notes. Our best episode was about tropes.
See, people don't really have high expectations for video game adaptations, so maybe some people just skip that because they're like, Sonic's not for me.
Or they're like, spoilers, movie's still in theaters, how dare you? I know these guys, I'm just going to spoil the entire movie. And I just played through Sonic Adventure 2, which is an identical plot, and I do not want my movie spoiled.
But, so, way back in 2015, apparently.
How dare that be way back?
That's when the Borderlands movie was announced.
Oh.
Apparently.
Okay. You see, here's the thing about the Carl giving movie reviews. Is it's super on brand, and the only reason it irks me is you use it as a surprise, so we can't just talk about the movie you're reviewing and similar topics. That's the problem, right? Because if you said, what I'm like, what do you want to talk about? You're like, I want to talk about Sakamoto days and board games. Also, I'm going to give a 15-minute explanation of the Borderlands. I'm like, I played all of those, right? Like, this could be an episode easy. And you're like, no. This is an unrelated, unsolicited movie review that I'm surprising you with at the start, and you're not allowed to coordinate our content because I'm going to do this to you. And I'm like, you get a big episode themes. You could just say, hey, I saw Borderlands. Like, no, this got to be a surprise. Carl Core needs to be a surprise. It needs to be Mr. Batard decided to put shrimp on this pizza. We didn't stock shrimp, so I went to the river with a crayfish net. Things I can't plan for. This I could have planned for.
Well, no, okay. So, I mean, where this actually begins is that Ryan George did his pitch meeting for Borderlands.
Not a sponsor, just a fan. We're a fan
Yeah,
of
yeah.
him. If he's a fan of us, please tell us, Ryan George. Please comment that just says the word seed on our video. You don't even have to say you liked it. The knowledge that you saw this alone will make me giddy.
I was actually thinking about commenting on one of his videos and asking him, since you're famous enough to get cameos with Simu Liu, the Shing,
Yeah,
the Ten Rings guy.
Shang-Chi, yeah.
I can't.
Or Sean, if it's
Yeah, okay. Anyways, so Simu Liu did a episode with Ryan George, and it's like, he's got some actual contacts, I guess. I was going to ask him how often he gets unsolicited requests for to be a guest star on various things.
Wild. As part of my course, we have literally classes on how to interact with famous authors and celebrities and things. And here's the takeaway. If you make something that requires work for somebody, they innately will shrug against it. You're like, hey, read my book. No one's ever reading a book that way. But what they like is quick, answerable questions. So had we sent a message, hey, would you like to star on our podcast? That would never work. That's work. But if you do ask, oh, do you turn down guest things all the time? That's a question, so that way they can answer it. Because,
okay.
People like that are often very generous. But when it feels like someone's, being overly clingy, and unless you're in, an inauguration crowd, you don't want to be overly clingy, like you're trying to take advantage of someone. So, I would say, how often do you get da-da-da-da? Fair question. But if you try and spin that into, do you want to be on our podcast? He'll let us know.
Right. But more to the point, he did his pitch meeting for Borderlands. And near the end of the pitch meeting, the producer guy asked writer guy, who is this for? And writer guy, he goes on this eloquent rant about how Borderlands was made for that person who has a vaguely positive feeling about Borderlands, but doesn't actually know enough about Borderlands to be able to make any comments on their bizarre casting choices and their interpretation of the source material, the creative license they took with it. And, quite honestly, I think I am the target audience, right? I have vaguely positive feelings about Borderlands because I've heard that the games are great and they do seem like they're fun, and I really appreciate how they invented a genre of video games, basically, because shoot and loot did not exist before Borderlands, basically.
I'll let them have it. It's there's always a game that did it first, but Borderlands brought it into the mainstream. It's the first looter shooter I played.
Right. So I really respect the franchise as a whole. And so it's man, I do have vaguely positive feelings towards this, but I don't really know anything about the games. So, I wasn't surprised when Lilith had weird alien powers, but it didn't bother me in any way. Nothing, none of the choices they made specifically bothered me. And it's I might be their target audience. And when I saw the trailer, I was like, yeah, that looks like it could be a fun movie. Then I heard the fan reaction to the trailer, and it's like, that's not a great sign. And then I heard that it bombed in the box office. It's like, that's also not a great sign. And then I watched Ryan George's pitch video, and it's like, he says I'm their target audience, but there's a lot of red flags. I don't know if I actually want to commit to watching this movie because it's 2-hour movie or something, right? But my fiance, she just refused to let it go. She's like, oh, we got lots of movies to watch, like Borderlands. And I'm like, are you sure you want to watch Borderlands? It's probably not going to be that good. She's like, yeah. Let's watch Borderlands. And she refused to just forget that it existed. Right?
How dare she have object permanence?
Right. And so then we came home after going to an enjoyable family gathering, a baby shower for my cousin. So we came home and it was like, okay, fine, let's watch Borderlands. There are very, very few movies that my fiance actually thinks are bad. But Borderlands even though we were watching it because she wanted to, she fell asleep. She really did not like it, and I mean, like, there's almost no redeeming qualities about it. It's just it is exactly as bad as all the reviews would suggest.
So here's what's kind of interesting about Borderlands, and like to go like make some big sweeping claims. So
Hmm.
Borderlands was inspired by like Mad Max, Firefly, Trigun, like the space. It was inspired by the concept of the space western, right?
Hmm.
And the movie John Carter of Mars, which is a weird pivot, also has the same problem where like the ideas that inspired it are better than it, and enough things have come out since then or before then that like by trying to make a Marvel movie effectively, it's like they wanted to
Hmm.
make Guardians of the Galaxy using the Borderlands IP. Borderlands
Hmm.
IP was only good because it was a bunch of references to other things, either subtle or
Hmm.
overt, right? Like the blind,
Yeah.
it's like it comes off as profoundly bland because for one thing, we just watched Dune, and Borderlands wishes it was Dune.
Yeah.
Like Dune's the thing it's parodying, not particularly well, and it's like when we were talking about the Sonic adaptation on that episode no one saw.
Hmm.
It's like you can be inspired by things, but you still have to like have a core and a heart to your movie. And
Hmm.
Borderlands is just like so bland. And I don't really know if you could have fixed it, because Borderlands was already kind of like a novelty knockoff. Where it's like I was
Hmm.
playing through a Borderlands game recently, Tiny Tina's Wonderland, which is like an in-universe D&D Borderlands spin-offy thing.
Right.
And you mash A through the text. You don't read the text of Borderlands. You enjoy how there's occasionally like a quippy thing when an enemy introduces himself, and then you shoot them. It's just, it wasn't a good IP to do this for. Unless they want to like go all in on the comedy. Like you would have need the directorial staff of Hot Fuzz to have made that movie good.
Oh, Hot Fuzz.
Like you would
That,
have,
that is a great movie.
because you would have needed characters to take that premise completely seriously, and that have been the joke to get away with it.
Hmm. Yeah, and then it's just like, why did they cast Kevin Hart as the serious mercenary?
Seems like a misplay.
Well,
Because
yeah,
Keanu
it's just
Reeves
like,
turned them down to play Shadow the Hedgehog. All the good actors are busy in that franchise because they believe in it. Because it's less stupid than Borderlands.
in any event, what's new with me? I guess you could take the takeaway could be that my cousin had a baby on Christmas Day. Is
So I made a
interesting.
quip when I was describing you to a friend of mine. I think I've given this monologue on the podcast as well. So I have
Okay.
ADHD where I can't regulate attention.
Hmm.
You have extreme attention regulation, where it's like all things get your attention of all evenness at all times.
Mm.
So it's like, yes, to Carl, this child being born on Christmas who could very literally be Jesus. But also this Borderlands movie was very mediocre and I knew it, but I watched it anyway, are of equal importance.
Well, like you say, we don't know what our fans or listeners actually like.
Like that
We
was a great
appreciate
pivot.
all of our
We don't know
listeners.
who our target audience are 3 people. I have this narrowed down. First, it is not native English speakers who need something bland to listen to the background to practice the language.
Okay.
Second, people who love watching Richard get dunked on and are willing to wait an ungodly amount of time for it to happen.
Right.
And 3, the Carl fanboys.
The ones with the tattoos.
Yeah. So it's like, I love the idea that we're just like the number one source of like some random German English class. And like they like have to like write essays and like fix our grammar because we're just so like the perfect level of bad that they need to use as like a how not to English class. And they're like, oh, I can't understand this Richard. He talks so fast. It's like, good, learn.
Well, I mean, speaking of talking fast, what's new with you, Richard?
So I had a weird day. So I'm back to full classes, and there's this like frozen ice hell outside, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I don't have class on Mondays because life is straight up rigged for me.
Nice.
My class today was canceled for a work period because we have to write a novel. So I had to put in 7,000 words on this novel. But I had work today as well. And I am so conditioned that I'm going to start this with a question. I actually did some prep work for our What's New section. So, Carl,
Okay.
with your current job, a job I've worked in the past before, what is your morning procedure to get ready to work when you know it's minus 30 outside? Like, what do you do?
What do I do?
Yeah.
Um,
Assuming you have to,
Probably-
like, you have to go a decent distance to get there.
well, see, I'm fortunate enough that eons ago, when we were both learning how to drive, I actually finished the course, so I can drive myself around.
100 episodes to get that sick Richard burn.
You were so close. And then you moved and had to reset.
There's so many steps, though, like, still, like, socks, pants, underpants, shirt, overshirt, gloves, toque, get to the car, turn on the car, leave the car, make yourself breakfast, go back to the now warm car, drive 5 minutes.
Well, firstly, my daily commute is about 11 minutes. And secondly, I actually, I put on a sweater, I put on a winter coat, I go out, I start the car, and then I immediately drive to work.
So here's what's funny. Like, I have flashbacks when we lived in Speedy Creek. So, like, it wasn't a long walk, but the wind down that highway would literally, like, tear through your flesh.
Ooh, yeah, that was rough back before I could actually drive.
So,
although,
like,
I mean, it wouldn't have been a distance worth driving.
What's
But
interesting, like, even that short walk was just brutal. Like, I think about how Naruto's wind shuriken slices someone on a cellular level. I'm like, yeah, I can relate. So,
yeah,
the thing is, so I look at my work schedule, right? And I start thinking, like I always have, of coats, layers. I have to, like, go from my house to the bus stop. Do I take the closer bus that takes longer, or walk further to the further bus that takes less time? So I'm doing all my morning prep for my 9 a.m. shift, right?
right.
I get outside, and then I realize something. I work in tech. So I sent my boss a message being like, it is cold. Can I just zoom into the meetings today? And they're like, yeah, of course. And that's what's so wild, is we have, like, a decent percentage of the workforce who have just not go to work as an option. So much of my life is I have to go to work to make the money to live that I would never, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, consider not going to work because it's cold. But my class was canceled for a work period today, like I mentioned. And I had, like, this big internal moment of, I'm like, I could ask Carl 100 things he would do before going to work, and none of them would be call the office because it's cold and not go to work.
Oh yeah, when it's cold out, we need more people to work because nobody in the city wants to actually, like, cook or go anywhere, so they order pizza.
Yeah, I had pizza for dinner.
Yeah, it was cold. That pizza place was probably busy.
Well, Pizza Hut actually has an interesting new product you should steal.
Oh.
So my brother orders this new kind of pizza.
Okay.
And follow me here because it's so obvious that it'll actually hurt you that you didn't think of this.
All right.
So start with a pepperoni pizza.
Mm-hmm.
Shape it like a cheesy bread, where you slice it into, like, the dipping size strips.
Okay.
Put 4 dips in the box.
Okay.
Call it a dippin' pizza.
Does it cost more?
Nope, costs less. I love it. I love the idea of slicing your pizza so it fits in the dip, specifically.
Right.
Having a good flavor instead of just cheesy bread, and having a variety of dips. That's just, I'm like, how has no one done this in my 35 years of existence to be like, hey, we cut it into the dipping bread shaped dip strips so you can dip them in the nacho cheesy goodness easily.
Well, I mean, we do have a couple varieties of cheesy bread. Like, we have ranch bacon wedgie gets ranch instead of the garlic butter and gets bacon.
I mean,
or
those
the
are
bullseye
good.
bacon
I
wedgie.
can confirm.
Bullseye bacon wedgie, that's another not super popular because bullseye's kind of a love it or hate it thing, but
like, you get the idea of, like, hey, if we cut a pizza like the dipping and put it with a bunch of dips, you get, like, 5 flavors of pizza.
Yeah.
And it costs you, like, nothing. You're just cutting it in a different way and putting some dips in the box. And if you do it right, you put in those dips that expire next week.
Okay, but did this pizza get ordered today?
Yeah. And it was delicious. But yeah, so that's what's new with me is I had that epiphany that I work a white-collar job and I can just remote in. Had an hour-long meeting about grammar. I'm living my best life. Basically, it was like, we had a lengthy conversation about why are people using all case? Why are people bolding things? Why are people doing this? And then like wrote a style guide to be like, examples are E, period, G, period, comma, all lowercase. So my boss asks me, so why are some of them uppercase when we know this? And I'm like, this answer's going to hurt you. Some of this starts with an example in a new line, and every word processor ever made wants to turn the first letter capital. So what happened is we fixed all this, and then Word just unfixed it for us. Because if you start a sentence with a lowercase, it makes Word mad. And because it's E.G. comma, it assumes the next word starts uppercase, because that's how Word has been trained. So literally we fixed it, moved it onto a new file, and then it unfixed itself. So tomorrow I get a copy edit all morning, which is great, by the way. Best money I can make is going through a word file being like, and that's a lowercase, and that's a lowercase. Why did you bold this? But also we had a full conversation of like, who uses single quotes and why? And I gotta give my fun fact that single quotes are used when having an internal monologue when italics have a different purpose in your writing and are also used for quotes within quotes. And I give this speech and my boss is like, all right, so it's for internal dialogue or a quote within a quote. Why would we ever use that? I'm like, oh, we should never use that. We should ban everyone for using that. I don't even think I should be using these.
The quotes within quotes? So the
single quotes in general should not be used by people. Because that use case is so specific.
Right, because the norm is to use italics when you're having an internal monologue.
Yeah, but a lot of people, I have to take away their italics privilege when I'm editing for them.
Oh?
Because they'll use italics for emphasis as well.
In which case they should be using the single quotes, but nobody should be using single quotes, so...
Yeah, because it's like, if you use italics for something, only use it for that thing. You can't also use it for handwritten letters, and use it for internal monologues, and use it for texting, and use it for emphasis. Pick one. You only get one. And then I shake my fist at thee.
Shake your fist angrily.
In one of my books, I was using brackets for texting, and I got mixed results from people, because I'm like, in my brain, that makes sense, because you send text in little boxes.
Right.
But yeah, that's what's new with me is I got to avoid the cold and copy edit. I am very much not that exciting, and it is lovely.
It is lovely that you're not that exciting. But you know what is exciting? Sakamoto days.
Alright, so we've talked a lot about Sakamoto days in passing. I don't think it's ever been an episode focus, except like when it came out when we did one of our show and jump roundups.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to start with one of the things that drives me mental in anime and manga. Okay. You're allowed a plus-size character whose specific power isn't turning skinny after they use their powers. So I'm going to start listing some animes that have a fat character that turns skinny as a power-up.
Okay.
Dragon Ball. Naruto.
Okay.
One Piece.
Okay. No, Naruto, it's kind of the opposite. He powers up and then he becomes skinny because he burns all his fat. But
then
it's
he
not
learned
that's
super
like
mode, which let him get
down.
the power up and stay jacked.
Yeah, you're right.
As long as the end result is I've turned my fat into skinny to be better.
Yeah, okay, anyways.
Bleach, one of the Squad Zero people, had that specific power.
Right.
One Piece.
Okay.
My Hero Academia.
Alright.
Probably JJK, I haven't checked.
Yeah, I don't think there were any fat people in JJK.
That's hilarious.
I'm sorry if that's offensive. But...
That's somehow worse, not better. And I'm sure there's more, but I hit like all of them. Like every big Show and Jump series in the last like 50 years has had the fat character get skinny as a power-up, and I hate it. Because realistically, if you're the size of Sakamoto, but kept his speed and strength, he would actually be so much more dangerous at that size because how mass works. It is way more dangerous for a 600-pound man to drop kick you.
Well, and then the series kind of like teased this idea, like the assassin doctor lady like hit Sakamoto's pressure points, and then he couldn't go skinny to power up, but it turns out that he just had to actually learn how to be comfortable in his own body, and it's like, man,
That's such
that's
a good
a
message, though,
surprisingly,
Greco.
yeah, it's a good message. And then probably about 20 chapters later, he just starts going skinny again. And now the latest few chapters, he's just been skinny constantly because he needs the extra power, I guess.
But also, like, to kind of, like, follow that one a bit, like, Dragon Ball Z is funny because the fat one is the good one.
Hmm.
But, like, they still get the shade. Like, I'm not giving them back to them.
Maybe we should read Roboco just
No,
to see if the robot gets
never.
skinny as a power up.
I refuse. So, to talk a bit about the premise of Sakamoto
Sorry.
Days. So, I can't remember the name of it, but there's an anime that made it on Netflix that was really more an animated slideshow that was like about a Yakuza husband.
Okay.
I'm drawing a blank on the name of that. But it's one of my favorite concepts is I love when you give someone like the Ryonin Kenshin backstory, but they get to be happy afterward. Like, bonus points to Sakamoto Days, a badass assassin, meets cute cashier, falls head over heels, starts a family, gets overweight, lives his best life. That's great. That is a character arc. And then other characters like, don't you want to be a badass? Like, no. My life is great.
Yeah, so I mean that exact premise, like I do think the absolute best arc in Sakamoto Days is when they realize that there's a bounty on Sakamoto's head, but they have to take his daughter to the fair.
Yeah.
Because it's this great mixture of him trying to be this awesome family man while also have to deal with all the crap that comes with being a retired assassin.
So, like, the first 2 episodes have come out, and we've been kind of, like, spoiled for good animation for things. So I watched this and I'm like, oh man, watching him deflect a bullet with chopstick was sick. And it's like, as weird as it sounds, I like gag series and I like series of overall arcs. But these overall arcs are like, it's kind of a hot take, but a lot of these assassin animes, like Assassination Classroom, Go-Go 13, even Kenshin to a certain extent. Ever find that thing where they have to come up with increasingly weird gimmicks to give assassins because they don't have a power system? So they have like people like sucking on guns and other nonsense?
Right.
Just kind of curious your thoughts on that, where it's like, yeah, we have this League of Assassins, but we're not actually going to give them superpowers. So instead we're just going to give them increasingly gimmicky gimmicks?
I would definitely agree. Sakamoto is supposed to be the legendary assassin. And he is supposed to be somewhat powered down because he's been retired and got out of shape and whatnot. But then, like, it's impressive that he doesn't die to all these other crazy assassins. But what actually made him so legendary compared to all these people who have these incredible and strange powers? Like the film director guy who has an incredibly steady hand as long as he's filming something. And he, like, it's like, what the heck?
What's kind of funny is, like, we've done our whole episode on the overpowered protagonist on why Saitama works and why when a reincarnated as a sexy harem leader doesn't. And a lot of it comes down to, like, the likability of the protagonist and them having goals that are hard to achieve. So,
right.
I like OG Superman because OG Superman's win condition is never kill the enemy. It's prevent bad things from happening. So even though Superman has all of the superpowers, because his goal is like live a healthy work-life balance and be inspirational, a lot of it comes to the, oh, I could just punch through this person like they're made of cardboard, but I can't because I'm more than that. So, like, Sakamoto's interesting because it's like, oh yeah, his motivation isn't being badass. And I'm willing to give badass assassin backstory a free pass in anime. Like,
Hmm.
Ryonen Kenshin took like 200 episodes to bother to explain why he was this legendary badass that was acting as a doof.
Right.
I've been watching that again also on Crunchyroll because they reanimated it.
Hmm.
The pacing's a little off, but it's Ryonen Kenshin, so bad person the writer may or may not have been, not getting into that. Entertaining series nonetheless. No characters go through magic weight loss that I'm aware of.
I don't think so.
They do have an openly trans character, and I don't think they handled it poorly. I'll get back to you on that one. I mean, I also really enjoy anime where the characters are. I like to say, as a rule of thumb, every anime character should just be aged by 4 years to make these series make any sense and the proportions look sensible in the slightest.
Right.
But, like, yeah, I love me a good adult protagonist. So, Sakamoto Days, super strong protagonist, strong silent, family man, secret badass, works at a convenience store.
Right.
His struggles is that his wife said no killing,
Hmm.
and his daughter is more important. How do you feel about...
Well, I mean, those were his struggles, and they kind of come up in passing every now and then. But I've said before on the podcast that usually between 100 and 150 chapters, there's a tonal pivot, and that it's really hard to create a consistent series that doesn't have this big turn around that mark.
Attack on Titan. Ugh.
But Sakamoto Days, surprisingly, like I say, the best arc is the amusement park arc. But that was only like chapter 60, and it's right there that suddenly it shifts just straight into an action series. And something that actually really annoys me, they had this character, former Triad member, and she's working at the convenience. It's a female character working in the convenience store. And after the amusement park arc, she just gets written out of the story. Like, she just stops having any lines or doing anything meaningful. And we just like I don't understand why. And then they feel like they need another female character, so they add another female character. But it's like, I don't get it.
So, Sakamoto Days. So, we like to talk how a lot of Shonen Jump series recently, as we went through and listed all the ones that have been canceled, have that, like, chapter 60, hey, I guess we need a bigger story now because I lived longer than we were expecting. So it's like, most manga that come out now aren't as ambitious. I'm going to use One Piece and Naruto as examples, where in One Piece and Naruto, they list out that their worlds have truly stupidly massive scopes early on, and don't use them. One Piece is like, yeah, I'm not even at the Grand Line yet. I'm not at the part where the adventure starts yet. For the entire duration of, like, Sakamoto Days, they haven't actually hit the ocean yet.
Right.
Naruto's like, there's 5 great villages, and then they introduce one dude from the water village, and then they're like, okay, so there's, like, a full world here, and we're only looking at the children while the adults look cool lurking in the background. Because they're like, oh yeah, not only, it's like Orochimaru's a local villain, and then we have the actual every other ninja village and ninja world going on, and then the 10 clouded villages, like, okay, Naruto's setting itself up forever. Bleach did the opposite. Bleach is like, I'm going to name drop all 13 of my important characters in the first plot arc. Oh crap, my power scaling is ruined, because now he's as strong as a captain, which we established were the strong characters. Bleach doesn't feel like it expected to go as long as it did.
Right.
Because it's like, yeah, no, you didn't really write past Soul Society. And you absolutely did not plan the Quincy thing as a thing. Despite anime retcons.
Well, and again, the Soul Society, each arc in Bleach is actually like that tonal pivot.
Oh, yeah.
Because, like, they're all... The first arc is all about hollows. The second arc is all about soul reapers. The third arc is all about Huecamundo.
I'm so mad that the Huecamundo stuff doesn't actually, like, talk about hollows. They're like, we introduced a new kind of hollow. I'm like, I wanted to know about the old ones you'd actually set up. No? Okay.
Yeah, no, all they did was set up that the new hollows are stronger than the old hollows because they're old hollows that ascended.
Yep. But not to do another Bleach episode, as I am one to do. The point being that these huge pivots happen. One Piece
Mm-hmm.
avoids it to a large extent because each arc, which is just a series of islands, kind of has its own
Right.
tone set for the Go-Get. To the point
Right.
where they even like animate each arc differently almost. Like the first
Really?
thing that like they did like the Egghead Island arc recently. It was like more bright and bouncy and colorful animation where Wano was like more serious almost. It's like they went from like Ryonen Kenshin to My Hero in vibes.
Ah.
And they can get away with that because he started out with a huge scope.
Mm-hmm.
Hunter x Hunter's another one where it's like they started with a huge scope and they never even got close to using it. They never explored their whole world before they announced it's just an island in a bigger world. Like, they didn't even get close to scoping out the size of the world they set up.
Right.
Where Dragon Ball, they had to keep upping the scope every season, but they did it in, like, a way that is both brilliant and idiotic. Alright, he's the strongest on Earth. I guess there's aliens now. Also, the afterlife is just a place you can take a plane. I guess there's a demon world now. Oh, better throw in some time travel for good measure. And they're like, wow. Yeah, better like, okay, we've used everyone in the universe and all the timelines, so we should probably pull someone in from the multiverse.
Mm. That is definitely true.
And ridiculous. Dragon Ball gets like a pass. It like got grandfathered into some things it wouldn't pass. It's kind of like how if alcohol was a new invention, it would never get sold. There is no way you can patent liquid poison that gives you cancer with the only intended side effect of making you silly. There is no way you'd ever get the license to sell beer when you explained what it was and what it did, if it was a new invention. Because it just kills people. And its upside is it kills people. That's the point. The point is you're drinking poison. But back to Sakamoto days.
Mm-hmm.
So, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, I'm opting out.
You're opting out.
Freedom.
So, yeah, the first roughly 60 chapters, I don't know how long that's going to be in terms of the anime, but the first roughly 60 chapters
it's kind of funny with modern numbers, probably like 30. Like, they go through the material way faster than they used to because ADHD.
But so that's focusing on Sakamoto just trying to live his best life as a cashier, and there's lots of characters that could have been fun and interesting that they introduced. Like there's the one chapter that's about this female police officer who's chasing down Sakamoto because they think he's related to this bus incident in the previous chapter. And she seemed like she could be a recurring character, but then she's just kind of not, because that was really close to that tonal pivot. I don't know why I keep saying shivit.
Because it's fun.
That's
I got no problems with the tonal shivit.
Where suddenly it's all about the assassin world. And I almost feel like as an assassin world, Sakamoto Days is kind of starting to have that same problem that John Wick had, where
everyone
the more you learn about
where they could swing an election with sheer numbers. Quote Ryan George.
And like the more you learn about this assassin world and the crazy powers that these assassins have, the more unbelievable it becomes, because like there's plot holes and inconsistencies and like this world just doesn't work for the sheer amount of damage that these assassins do. Or there's like this museum arc where the chairman of the Japanese Assassin Association just wants to go see some art, and so they put all this assassin art in there. Everyone seems to know that there's an assassin world, but like nobody really does. I don't know.
It has. So remember that new manga that's like about Yakuza, but not really?
Mm-hmm.
So this has the Naruto problem, where they're ninjas who don't do ninja things.
Right.
So an assassin is supposed to be stealthy. These aren't assassins. Like, if they were super martial artists, the show would work better. Like, if this was like, hot take, if we replaced assassins with martial artists in this story, and made Sakamoto a retired martial arts master who used to kill people with his bare hands, it works better.
Yeah, I think it does.
It's kind of like how Luffy's not actually a pirate because he never pirates anything.
Yeah, pirates were not good people.
Luffy's a sailor. He's a sailor. But I digress. Like, One Piece gets away with it because, like, it has very anti-government overtones, where it's like they're pirates because the authoritarian ruling class has labeled anyone who's a dissident among their society a terrorist, basically.
Right.
He's doing something with it. I'm gonna let Oda cook. But, like, yeah, Naruto's not about ninjas.
Naruto's not about ninjas.
Believe
Sakamoto days is just not really
all the time. It drives me nuts. I don't know in the current series if he's in his human body or his ghost body, because that stopped being a thing they cared about. Like, it's like, you're bleeding out on the ground. I'm like, but they're ghosts. They have blood? Then how does a hollow hole work if you can stab them in the liver? We're prepared to answer these questions. So also, Sakamoto Days has another problem.
Oh?
Their Genos isn't compelling. So Shin's the main character of Sakamoto Days.
Right.
We made him psychic because we needed to do something interesting with him. Mostly so Sakamoto can say what he's thinking to Shin. So, like, the reason Shin's psychic is specifically so Sakamoto can say sassy things in front of his family to Shin.
But see, that gag apparently wore thin and didn't have enough, there weren't other psychic people. So, it's like, it's almost not even a thing that he's communicating telepathically to Shin anymore.
Right, he's like, I'm going to use my telepathic powers to react before people shoot to ultra... I'm like, dude, watch some spy movies or something. Like, you either need to, like, reduce the anime in this or ramp it up, and I'm not sure which way they should go. But to flip the script a bit, to give random, unprepared Spy Family comparisons.
Okay.
So, first up, Spy Family versus Sakamoto Days. They actually have really similar premises.
Yeah, okay.
Sakamoto comes out more consistently. And I like the character Sakamoto more than I like any one character in Spy Family. Spy Family has a substantially better ensemble cast. I will say, though, Spy Family, being like the main villain's also psychic, spoilers, made so much sense I was happy with it.
He might be psychic.
Oh, he's definitely psychic. Like, it clicks together so nicely. He was doing experiments. He made a little girl psychic through these experiments to do on himself, to be able to be a mind reader that drove him insane. No, there's like a lot of ways it can go.
There are a lot of ways it can go. It's true. It would make sense and be universe consistent for him to be psychic.
Yeah, so it's like the main villain being psychic is really funny.
Psychic.
Because here's where this pays off amazingly. If we get into an endgame situation, Lloyd doesn't know Yor's a badass, and Yor doesn't know Lloyd's a badass. Which means if he's dealing with one of them, reading the mind would warn him nothing at all about the other. Which is an amazing Chekhov's gun if they end up defeating the big bad, because he can't spy on the other one because they simply don't know.
Right.
So there's a lot of ways it could go. But it released things slowly, so it's like, I'll put the hold on Spy Family. Where Sakamoto Days, it's like, he's psychic, but so what? Because they don't have any intrigue. Hot take, a mind-reading character is kind of pointless if there's nothing sassy for them to mind-read. Like, the dude has the best skill set for a rogue imaginable, and mostly just fights people with chainsaws.
Well, he's got his, like, super glove that has a half-second delay that he has to use his psychic powers to account for.
Yeah, that's lame. Mind reading's already a sick ability. Use that. Just use it well.
So I mean, we've levied a lot of complaints against Sakamoto Days, but it is a series that I do follow every week. So like I do still enjoy it.
Because I dropped off at the JCC tuning exams because they were just I don't get it. Maybe you can explain this to me. So, we go through Sakamoto Days. We start with the amusement park arc. Best arc.
Mhm.
We go to the lab arc where the female love interest is kidnapped, Shin's female love interest, because it is required by anime law.
This love interest that gets written out of the show, basically. Yeah.
Yep. Then we get to these death row prisoners, also required by show and law. Then we do the most contrived tuning exam in existence. Because maybe they explain this later, but if everyone in the organization knows who Sakamoto is, they know he's a super badass, dangerous John Wick fellow.
Yeah.
He could have just went through the front door. So he's willing to disguise himself as his wife to enter a tuning exam where people are fucking remote piloting, drone operating assassins. But it never occurs to him to walk through the front door.
You got it a little bit mixed up. He goes through the tuning exams, and because he's overweight, they don't recognize him. And then when he gets to the end of the tuning exams, they're like, "Oh, that was Sakamoto, so we can't actually like allow him to pass the exam because he's already an assassin." And then has to sneak into the school in disguise because they won't let him pass as a student.
But why is school, and why is he sneaking into it? That's where I'm stuck.
Yeah, I don't...
I don't remember why they're doing any of this.
So they're sneaking into the school because the school has a database on former students, and the main villain is a former student.
See, what breaks me is, like... So, Sakamoto is John Wick.
Mm-hmm.
Why would John Wick not just break into the building and steal the data?
Well, I mean, nobody's ever found the database because the database is a person.
It's only if you had someone who could read minds to interrogate someone to then break into the base. Like, they forgot to... So, to lap around my rant about the tuning exam, a format I love in a lot of series. In your spy assassin thriller, you don't go tuning exam, you go Mission Impossible movie. It's so obvious. You take your cast of 3 and have them plan elaborate heist. Instead, it was week after week of random bullshit until I got burned out.
Yeah. Okay. So, did you? I don't remember. I think it was after the tuning exams that they reveal that Sakamoto's friend Slur, the big bad.
Yeah.
That
Moosehead guy, I can't remember.
No, Moosehead. Slur X. The Slur and X are the same person. The Moosehead guy is well, he seems to be pretty much completely a cyborg.
Okay.
But anyways, Slur was tricked into murdering this lady named Rion, and the trauma caused him to create a second personality within himself that is this person that he killed. And then his second personality puts a bounty on Sakamoto's head so that Sakamoto will come and find them and kill the crazy guy. Okay. Which then there's a wrench thrown in their plan that Sakamoto doesn't kill people anymore, even though there are numerous times throughout the show where they appear to snap people's necks. Both Shin and Sakamoto just kind of go around knocking people out with like what definitely looks, and there's even a little like sound effect that looks like they snap people's necks, but there's no blood, so they're probably not dead. And so now the latest arc is that the crazy guy created another personality of someone he killed, which is the apparently not so legendary, but more powerful than Sakamoto ever was, swordsman.
Okay.
Yeah, and so now he's the main big bad. He has 3 personalities. One that's trying to just see the world burn because he doesn't like the JAA. One that's trying to stop the guy that's trying to see the world burn. And one that's just a mumbling, ridiculously powerful swordsman that's just murdering everyone indiscriminately.
So, here's kind of... We've had this talk before about narrative design.
Mm-hmm.
So, the problem with this villain in Sakamoto Days is
Mhm.
for a character arc, you need your protagonist to go over a journey and change.
Yeah.
Sakamoto and Shin don't have anything to learn from this story. So this villain isn't thematically resonant. So we're going to loop back to Bleach as a character example, weirdly enough. So if we take Bleach and pretend it was just Soul Society for the fun of it, we had Captain Kuchiki, who was, I will follow the rules above all else. Even my own family, even if I hate to do it. Because someone needs to follow the rules to set an example, or there'll be no rules. Then you have Ichigo being like, yeah, I literally can't follow the rules because they weren't written for me. I don't dislike any of you, but the current hierarchy you've built does not account for my existence. And what you're doing is wrong, because even though they broke a rule, the rule is stupid. So that way, their final fight was literally on character A, who wants to enforce the rules at the detriment of losing his family, to character B saying, it's not that you shouldn't break the rules, it's that the rules themselves are stupid. You have a thematic fight, and then each blow between the two is getting that message across. You zoom into Naruto, for example, and you have Naruto versus Rock Lee versus Gaara is the best example of this. Hard work and effort versus the cruelty of growing up. And then Naruto being the character in the middle, who could be Gaara or he could be Rock Lee, and chooses to go the Rock Lee route of hard work and effort instead of just leaning into the monster route like Gaara, where he could have just let the fox out and murdered Gaara. But he chooses to use hard work and effort instead. So, the Sakamoto Days villain, if his motivation was, I want to protect my wife and my daughter, he'd be a great villain for that series.
Right.
Or if he was like a Mr. Suitengu and was like, I want to make a better world. Like, the villain, if Sakamoto's core drive is spending time with his family, the villain's core drive either needs to be he can't spend time with his family because they're dead and Sakamoto killed them, or I'm also trying to perfect my family in an opposite way.
Well, so I guess a little more backstory on the villain. Spoiler alert. He grew up in an orphanage that was used by the JAA to they just had orphans that they would train to be assassins and send out on missions, and if they died, it didn't matter.
I've seen Black Widow.
And he gets sent out on a mission to kill a specific person, and they're holding all of his quote-unquote family from the orphanage hostage to make him do these missions. And so then he eventually... it's kind of convoluted, but essentially after he kills the other female assassin character, and then he just is like, you know what? I'm strong enough. I could just go beat the people up and free my family from the orphanage, and then we can just burn the world down.
So it's like, if the twist is Sakamoto was supposed to be this guy's family and then decided to start his own family, there could be some symbolism going back and forth.
Yeah, no, there's no real direct connection between the two characters. It's like you said, it's he's a villain of the show, but he's not really Sakamoto's villain.
And like, to loop to Speed Grapher, for example, because your characters don't have to have a connected backstory to be symbolic mirrors or metaphors to help, because all good writing is your character has to go through a journey and be transformative, and that's who determines who your protagonist is.
Right.
So let's go Speed Grapher. Photographic guy had no actual connection to Mr. Suitengu.
Right.
But Mr. Suitengu's motivation was manipulate everybody to make a better world. And Photograph guy's motivation was paint the world clearly and report on it no matter how shitty.
Right.
So their chondristic ideologies were Mr. Suitengu wanted to scam everyone to make a better world, and Mr. Photographer guy just wanted to tell the story effectively. He was trying to save the girl, but really it was just getting the information out was his modus operandi. So they actually don't end up being enemies at the end, because Suitengu does his thing, and then dude guy retires as a photographer. Metaphorically stating, you know what, it's not worth outing Mr. Suitengu at this point. My search for truth wasn't worth it. So he went through a full character arc of changing from a relentless pursuit of truth to, the people I tried to save cared, doesn't matter if I go blind.
Right.
So even though those two characters had nothing to do with each other, they arced nicely.
Right. They were more like antagonistic forces than actual antagonistic characters for each
Well, it's
other.
more like they were story arcs to define each other. So now to focus into Shin. Shin is the main character of Sakamoto Days.
Right.
What is Shin's arc?
Well, so far, Shin's arc has been, I don't want to be useless to Sakamoto.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really it. Everything he does is to not be a burden to Sakamoto.
See, what's wild is they arced him in episode 1. Right, like, I'm going to kill Sakamoto, who is this badass I once knew. Now I work at Sakamoto's shop and his family has accepted me, and I must protect the shop. That's cute, but that means he's already arced. He's at the end of his story from the start, really.
Yeah, pretty much.
And I'm curious to see, like, where they're going with that. Because ironically, how I would have written Shin is I would have given him, like, a love interest as well. So that way he wants to be, like, where Sakamoto's at if I want to be happy and retire, so here's what I have to do. But I also kind of enjoy the idea that, like, if Shin kept getting Sakamoto into trouble with his efforts to protect Sakamoto's life, where the actual life lesson was, no, you just need to live your life, then there could be something to be had there.
Right.
But however, to loop back to my original rant, this is one of the better weekly things in Show and Jump. I just enjoy tearing things apart that I like. Like, I'm not going to tear apart Witch Watch, there's no point.
Oh, yeah, Witch Watch is tearing itself apart.
Through its very existence. And then Spy Family's too damn slow.
Well, I mean, the good news is that One Punch Man seems to be on a weekly schedule so far this year.
I'll believe it when I see it, and One Punch Man is too damn long. So, Spy Family's too damn slow because it's setting up all these plot threads that'll pay off in years. One Punch Man. So Saitama cannot arc. We acknowledge this. That is the joke of the show.
I mean, he's currently trying to arc because he's training against other order members to become strong enough to take over the JAA to make his convenience store a national chain.
So that's interesting. That's an like, it's not an arc though, because the character's personality needs to change over the course of it. Like, weirdly enough, Sakamoto could easily have had an arc of learning to speak up for himself. That could actually be his arc.
Yeah, he certainly doesn't seem to be the strong silent type anymore.
But it's weird because it's like, he's also at the end of his story. And if we reflect on Ryonin Kenshin, because it has a very similar structure to Sakamoto Days, Kenshin's arc, he started with, I am traumatized because I murdered my wife, and I've just kind of been wandering around doing good deeds, but I can't stay in one place too long because I'll get attached. Kenshin's arc was literally retiring from being the badass and working through his PTSD by letting other people in the new generation step up so he could hang up his sword and retire. Kenshin had a really compelling arc, because he literally watched him be like, oh, I really like this new person that I could easily fall in love with. Nope, can't do that. Better go fight the 10 assassins. Kenshin literally went and fought Bandage Guy to avoid being in a serious relationship. Because that was much easier. And got called out for it by, like, everyone in the cast, being like, dude. And then when the next villain shows up, they're all like, dude, there's 4 of them. You have 4 friends. He's like, well, this is my problem to clean up. And they're like, no, it's not. And then he beats the guy, and they're like, good, you're done. Go home. Your wife's waiting for you.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
But yeah,
Kenshin was a pretty good series.
My mini One Punch Man rant. Here's my next arc. Here's my next arc. And I'm like, cool. Saitama can't arc by design. Genos needs to do something. But they're doing the My Hero Academia thing of just introducing hundreds of characters. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Well, and like right now, One Punch Man has like 3 concurrent arcs that are going on.
And it's like...
Because there's... yeah.
Ugh. it's wild because it's like Garo's arc was interesting because that's a character who went through a plot arc. I actually really enjoyed the Garo plot arc. If One Punch Man had ended after Garo, I could sit here talking about, yeah, Saitama didn't learn anything. But Garo learned that being an edgelord badass meant nothing, because someone will always smack you down a peg. And, like, literally, you could be God himself, and then the universe will smack you down a peg. So grow up and apologize to your master, because he was right. No amount of being a crazy edgelord will make you happy.
Yeah. The one thing that Sakamoto does have going, which, like I said, I One Punch Man, 3 different arcs going on at the same time, and none of them have anything to do with Sakamoto with Saitama.
He did catch a lightsaber.
At least Garo or Sakamoto is at the center of each of his arcs, except for the one where Shin went into the prison to try and find a fortune teller to help him get more powerful. But even still, Sakamoto shows up to bail him out because of they actually set this up like hundreds of chapters before, that Sakamoto has GPSs in the name tags of all his employees.
I do appreciate that.
And so, like, it's come up once before, but now it's like the second time, it's like, I'd forgotten about that. It's like, how does Sakamoto keep showing up at the right time? Oh, right, because of the GPS trackers.
Because it's like, just now, like, chapter 196, they're like, we're going to do the Shin Sakamoto backstory. Because I got back into it after you mentioned a couple weeks ago I should get back into it. It's just like, it's just so interesting to be like, where do you want to go with Sakamoto's story? Is kind of where I'm at. I'm like, what is Sakamoto's arc? And if Sakamoto doesn't have one, that's fine, but then Shin needs to do something, be going somewhere with something. My question to you is, how long do you think Sakamoto Days is going to keep going? Do you think it's ramping up? Or do you think it's winding down? Because it's already beat a lot of mangas at 196.
I think we're still in a bit of a ramping up stage, but I feel like the big bad absorbing the swordsman's personality, or creating persona, because he doesn't actually.
He doesn't quite Mashibu's them for all intents and purposes, but doesn't actually Mashibu them.
Yeah. Like, there's no magic, science, or technology involved, but he absorbs their personality and abilities.
Which I'll allow.
In any event, I feel like that's the final stage of the boss. And I think it's still ramping up because the Order is trying to track down Sakamoto and friends.
Well, like, loop into narrative design, too. Like, right now we're in the middle of the Shin Sakamoto flashback.
Right.
That almost always is what happens before the final arc. When you go back into, like, the character's origin story and your Kenshin stories, your JoJo's, your Bleach even, like you saw Ichigo's mom and dad meeting and then mom dying, you're like, okay, this is what you do to grind up before your final plot arc.
Yeah, so I definitely think that Sakamoto is heading towards a final plot arc. But I think there's still a little bit more ramping up to do because they have a lot to do with facing the Order, I guess. Because they've introduced so many, not villains, but so many assassins that are, cool and interesting concepts. They're not characters, they're concepts.
So what's fun
that
is...
they have to deal with.
So what would be wild, and a flex they would not do, is they want to extend the Sakamoto Days by, I don't know, 400 chapters. Here's what I would do. Villain kills Sakamoto and gets Sakamoto powers.
Oh, that would be interesting.
And then suddenly Shin now has to protect his master's wife and daughter against evil Sakamoto. But I don't think they're going to go that direction. Like I said, they're probably just going to knock down all the bowling pins they set up, finish it, and then the last scene is going to be chonky Shin remembering when he was a badass, helping one of the younger people he encountered in the story. working at his convenience store
Yeah.
franchise location.
He does. He did specifically say that he wants to be a manager of the second location.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That's my theory. And with that, Sakamoto Days. It's interesting because, like, I keep comparing it to Ryonen Kenshin and to Spy Family, and I think the problem is that you're right. They had a third character to have like a nice balance, and then they abandoned that. Because, like, if you're doing the mentor-mentee story, it really works well to give them parallels. And it's like Sakamoto is a great sensei. He is the best Master Roshi I've seen in years.
Right.
I love wife guy Master Roshi as an archetype. Let's move away from should be in jail Master Roshi as an archetype to I love my wife and daughter, but I'm actually the most badass at this thing. That is a great archetype.
I agree.
But they just didn't quite know what to do with Shin. Like, I don't think he learned anything over the story. And I think having him add more characters to interact with would have fixed that. Because, like, if it was like, if Shin's lesson should be from Sakamoto, the secret to being the best assassin in the world is being a chill dude who loves his family. Like, that should be the life lesson, but they forgot to put it in. But it's also moving at such a nicer pace than a lot of things I've complained about. Like, Spy Family is moving so slow, they have one of the 8 lightning bolts, and have just now explained the concept of the villain, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, they have established their main villain from chapter 1, and had him say 3 lines of dialogue over the entire thing so far. So there's bonus points to Sakamoto Days for having momentum.
Yeah. Even if they have tried to stifle their momentum by having random side arcs. Like I said, Shin going into the prison to find the fortune teller, and then like this flashback arc, it was like, ugh.
They forgot banter. That's the only problem I have with these, because it's a long-running manga, right? Sometimes you need a beach episode. But that works if your characters have chemistry. So, the problem is if you send just Shin on a side quest, he doesn't have anyone to banter with.
Well, he can banter with the sniper guy that's kind of completely uninteresting.
Exactly. That's the problem. Everyone's a gimmick, and no one's a dude. But with that, it's time for our random question of the week.
Ooh, I love random questions.
Here is our random question. Wow, really?
All right.
Should cigarettes be banned?
Should cigarettes be banned? I think this falls into the same category of if alcohol was invented today, it would not be able to be sold. So, yeah.
So here's my hot take on cigarettes. Because if you just ban them overnight, people go through withdrawals and die.
Right.
I think the solution is we just keep upping the age limit on them. Every year, you have to be 1 more year older to buy one. And we just phase them out that way. Because they should be banned. They do nothing good for you at all, whatsoever. They're just bad for you.
That's kind of hilarious. You know, if someone who's 17 and the age limit is 18, right? Then they turn 18 and the age limit ups to 19. They're never going to be able to legally buy a cigarette.
Good. That just saved our healthcare system billions.
Well, I mean, that's probably true.
They're bad for you. Anyone who inhales a cigarette and thinks this is good for me is a liar. As a former smoker, anyone who's ever smoked a cigarette knows it's bad for them instantly.
Wait, you're a former smoker?
Mostly just to hit on people on smoke breaks.
Oh, yeah. It's kind of like the same reason that my brother started smoking is because smokers get more breaks at work.
Yeah, but haven't smoked in like 10 years? Anywho, long story short, also I used to enjoy cherry cigars, and they banned those because they taste good, because if they taste good, more people will smoke them, which is ironically exactly the case.
Right.
I'm a weird one where it's like, if someone bans something I like, and I can look at the logistics, and the reason they banned it is because it's something I like, I can kind of like give them a pass almost. It's like, oh yeah, this is bad for me, I see.
Yeah, I mean, so in essence, it's like I can see an economic argument because cigarettes and liquor kind of fall in the same category where they're very heavily taxed, and so there is a lot of government revenue that comes from the sales of stupid people buying things that are bad for them.
I do enjoy taxing the shit out of stupid people. I would rather tax rich people, but I'm willing to like do both.
Well, yeah, because it's the economic argument I don't think outweighs the other benefits of just like not selling poison to people. Like,
so it's kind of funny is with all the talk of tariffs and things going on and 51st state things, which we will not get into at the end of our episode. Our premier actually had a suggestion that one of their ways they're going to fight back is they're going to remove all American alcohol from the LCBO.
Right. Okay.
And my first thought was, and see if you're right, if you disagree or agree, removing all, it's like if our liquor stores in Canada could only sell Canadian liquor, like the government-owned liquor stores, isn't that just good?
Right.
Doesn't that just give more revenue to Canada outright?
I mean, provided that we have the infrastructure to keep up with the demand, yeah.
I mean, it's alcohol. Like, we should be fine. We're Canada true. And it's alcohol. We should be fine. It's like, sure, people would have to, like, go out of their way to import alcohol. Like, if they really want that American booze, they'd have to, like, have it mailed in or ordered special or go from America.
Right.
But I'm kind of like, yeah, wait a minute. Why don't we just make it that these stores have to sell Canadian goods?
Yeah.
I'm not that concerned if someone's fermented grape juice has to come from the local valleys instead of France. I know it's not technically champagne, it's just sparkling grape juice. But I'm fine with that.
So, again, my point about the infrastructure does kind of stand. Just a kind of a different angle. Amazon Web Services has a significant market share of website hosting capability, and there are lots of websites that have to deal with Amazon's terms and conditions because there's no one else that has the infrastructure to support their web traffic. So the idea that if Canada just started trying to be self-sufficient and use Canadian goods, we don't necessarily have the infrastructure to cut off foreign imports in that way, because we might not be able to meet the demand of our people using only Canadian goods.
But Mike's take weirdly being that if we, in individual cases instead of a general rule, we could meet that demand, especially as like a direct bargaining tactic to that nation. That seems like a win-win to me. Being like, hey, we're going to stop selling your alcohol until you drop this tariff. Also, we now get an uptick of our own alcohol being sold. Sounds great.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an economist. So this is just like off the cuff. I don't actually really know what I'm talking about.
Me either.
But
not my degree specialization. This isn't about quotation marks.
but the point is that I, as a non-smoker, I don't really care whether or not cigarettes are banned. I see the economic argument, but honestly, the strain on the healthcare system caused by cigarettes, I think it'd be a net benefit to have them banned.
Also, from like a personal point of view, I grew up with my mom smoking in the car. It's like, well, I had the window up. I'm like, nah, I'm pretty sure this fucked my lungs up. Pretty sure this is bad for me.
Are you sure it wasn't when you inhaled like straight fire that burned off your eyebrows?
That's the thing about how bad cigarettes are for me. The straight fire was healthier for my lungs.
Burned out some of that cigarette tar?
Probably gave it a good deep cleaning. Yeah, random question. I'm fine banning cigarettes. I see this like slippery slope liberty argument, and I'm like, okay. But yeah, if cigarette was released as a modern product, it would never pass FDA approval. Like, let's take marijuana, for example, because it's legal in Canada. I can talk about it. It's not a controversial subject. Cigarettes cause cancer. Marijuana prevents cancer. You couldn't buy the marijuana for 20 years.
Yeah.
One of them is literally prescribed for glaucoma, and the other one would never be prescribed for anyone for any reason.
Although it's so funny when you look at like when pregnant women were encouraged to smoke because it helps relieve stress.
Yep. So, in conclusion, I personally am absolutely fine with cigarettes being banned. But also, like, I don't know, after watching the States for a while, I'm not the biggest fan of freedom these days. Just in general, it seems that people are like, freedom means I, a tech mogul whose name shall be removed from this video clipping, can just do a Nazi salute at an inauguration speech straight up because I'm free to do so. And I'm like, are you sure this is freedom? Or it's like the freedom for these companies to scan my data and take my YouTube transcripts and then feed them to an AI to make a robot sound like me to sell pornography. Is that too much freedom? That feels like too much freedom.
Well, to be fair, the Nazis culturally appropriated several things. The Roman salute being one of them. So maybe he wasn't being a Nazi.
Counterpoint.
Maybe he was just being a Roman.
Counterpoint. Everything he says and does publicly.
The guy is crazy.
There's a lot of evidence that he's a bad dude. Like I don't know what's worse. That he did a Nazi salute, or he's just that bad at dabbing. But yeah, I love the note that it's like, freedom to use one of 4 people's electronic devices and web hosting services because it's their freedom to have a monopoly on that. I'm like, wouldn't freedom be that I don't have to give him money? Or like you'll hear like the government be like, due to the free market, I gave $11 million to bail out the liquor stores to deal with the competition I created by letting corner stores sell booze. I'm like, that doesn't sound like a free market. That sounds like you put your tongue on the scale. Because free market means businesses should be allowed to die.
Well, anyways, that's enough rambling about economics.
I don't know. I kind of enjoy ending the episode
politics.
of me being like, hot take, Richard's anti-freedom straight up because people have done too many stupid things with it recently, and he's revoking their freedom privileges. You can earn your free speech after you take an etiquette class. Skill testing questions to access the internet. Like you have to pass a GED test to be allowed internet access.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I got.
Have to have a minimum level of intelligence to be able to use the internet.
Pretty much. It would help. Anyway, to everyone out there, don't smoke. Controversial take. But don't.
Yeah, self-care is important, and smoking is not self-care.
Unless it's like, I'll say that, like, smoking cigarettes, bad. If you tell me, like, it was the birth of my grandson, so I had a singular cigar, I'll be like, well, it looks cool aesthetically, so I'm gonna let you have that. It's kind of funny, like, you were talking about it earlier to loop back in. The idea that you could simply just tax a vice so unreasonably high that you simply couldn't afford enough cigarettes for it to be problematic might actually be the solution. Enjoy your $200 pack of cigarettes. Each one of those...
You are free to buy that.
Each one of those cigarettes is worth an entire lunch. So, really question how many of those you want to consume. Cigarettes are only legal now in Richardland if they're wrapped in gold leaf. That should reduce the number of smokers.
Yeah. Well, anyway, self-care, stay hydrated, exercise, go outside if it's not, too horribly cold.
Oh man, I hope we get so much hate mail from smokers after this episode. Bye. I just love the idea we spoil an entire manga series where I'm most like, yeah, Sakamoto Days was kind of good, but this villain's concept's stupid. And it's like, yeah, I agree. Smoking is bad. Cancel. Block. How dare you encroach on my freedom to poison myself by lighting tar on fire and inhaling it.
Okay, but
to take a break at work.
Complete pivot.